everybody, it's Mike Jeffers, Chicago Jazz Magazine, and welcome to the October 2018 feature interview here at ChicagoJazzMagazine.com. Honored to catch up with Marquis Hill, the incredible trumpet player from Chicago, who's now in New York, who's now touring the entire world. He just performed last night here at the Chicago Jazz Festival with Kurt Elling, and I know you do some different hits with Kurt throughout the country, throughout the world. But you're also traveling, you're touring with your own band, you're creating your own music. He's got a brand new recording coming out October 19th called Modern Flows Volume 2. Obviously there was a Volume 1, but you can get all the information at marquishill.com. I think I got all the plugs in, Marquis. I'm so glad you made it, man.
Yeah, glad to be here, man. Thank you.
I'm glad we connected on this. So before we get into all of your background, which obviously coming up through Chicago and performing throughout Chicago and having different influences, I'm sure, here and abroad, why don't we talk a little bit about this new recording since it's coming out, Modern Flows Volume 2. Why don't we talk about the concept of it and what people can expect to hear on October 19th?
Yeah, October 19th, Modern Flows Volume 2. And really, it's an extension of Volume 1, which I released in 2014. And I'm dealing with the concept of primarily jazz and hip-hop. So just blurring that genre line between jazz and hip-hop in such a seamless way that the audience connect with it. To me, it's my belief that it's the same music: jazz, hip-hop, blues, rock and roll, gospel, all these great genres, they come from the same tree.
Yeah.
Just blossom off on different branches. So this project specifically deals with jazz, hip-hop, R&B, soul, just really putting all these genres into one melting pot and stirring them up. And you can expect to hear original compositions that reflect all of those influences that's been on my sound, in one project.
You know, it's interesting, especially as somebody your age, because I think this is true for everybody. But, as you get older and get into the legends of jazz, they were influenced by jazz. But now, your age, my age, we're influenced by everything, because I'm pretty sure you grew up not just listening to jazz, which you probably did a lot of. You probably listened to blues, probably listened to rock, hip-hop, and everything else. So, coming up, this is just kind of an extension of you, right? That's just kind of the direction of the whole thing.
Yeah, That's exactly what it is. I was fortunate enough to be raised in a house. My mom, she played Marvin Gaye, Muddy Waters, B.B. King, Motown, Aretha Franklin, The Spinners, Stylistics, Barry White, Luther Vandross, all this great black music. So when I heard jazz for the first time, my mind was kind of blown, but I felt the connection between the two. So I think even at an early age, I felt that these music were connected, and I fell in love, and I've been playing the music ever since.
Yeah, I find it interesting, especially talking about Modern Flow Volume 2. When you talk about mixing hip-hop and jazz and blues and everything together, when you're writing this stuff, you're probably not thinking about stylistically what it is, right?
Exactly,
this is coming from somewhere deep inside you.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. I get asked that question a lot, and it's not like you said, I'm not purposely thinking I'm going to, add this specific aspect here and then a little bit. It just naturally comes out because that's the music that influenced me growing up. And I was born into the hip-hop generation. I just happened to fall in love with jazz at a young age. And my parents happened to play this soul music when I was a young child. And so it all just kind of influenced my sound.
Yeah.
So then being raised in Chicago and some of my mentors and the Velvet Lounge, I think all of these things just had a lot to do with my approach to music.
Yeah, and that's the natural growth of a well-rounded musician, right? Because you're curious about every genre.
Absolutely.
So I'm sure when you were in school, did you start off on trumpet or did you start off on something? Did I read somewhere that you actually played drums for a minute?
Yeah, I started in the 4th grade on drums. So I played drums, started with the snare drum, then I switched to the full drum set like halfway throughout 4th grade.
Well, they always start you off on snare drum to see what's going on.
See if you can hold rhythm.
Right.
But then I switched to the trumpet in the 5th grade, and that's when I joined the jazz band and I received my first jazz record in the 5th grade. I'll never forget, it's a Lee Morgan record called Candy. And at that time, I never heard anything like it. So,
with regards to switching to trumpet, and I'm always curious, what drew you to, let's say trumpet, what drew you into that the melodic instrument? Was it the melodies? I mean, because even though I play drums, I love melodies. I really love melodies. I love chord changes and melodies and stuff like that. Is that something that just said, you know what, I really love playing melodies, I'm going to go that direction?
That actually happened after the fact. My initial attraction to the trumpet, my older cousin played the trumpet, and we lived in a family building, and I would hear her practicing above me all the time, and I looked up to my cousin. I was like, I want to play the trumpet too. So I switched in 5th grade and fell in love with it. I got the Lee Morgan record. Again, I never heard anything like that, and I said, I wanted to sound like that on the trumpet. He sounded like a human voice singing to me, and I've always been attracted to that type of sound, and that's where my love for melodic sound and fluffy, beautiful sound of the trumpet came from.
Yeah. So when you're in school at that age and you're going through doing the band program, doing everything, was there somebody that you were studying with at that point, or somebody that kind of hipped you to, like, these are chord changes, or this is what Lee Morgan is actually doing?
Yeah.
And you better get your stuff together because you're never going to sound that good?
Yeah, my elementary school band director, Diane Ellis, she's a staple in Chicago, and she's really introduced a lot of young musicians and a lot of musicians on the scene today to this music at an early age. A lot of my peers, we came through Dixon Elementary School on the south side of Chicago, and she was responsible for influencing a lot of young children, hipping them to jazz at a young age, and I forever thank her for that.
Yeah, how about it, huh?
Yeah.
Now, I mean, you took it now, going through junior high and everything, and then getting into high school, and you went to Kenwood, I think, right?
Yeah, Kenwood Academy.
I mean, there's another really good jazz program, band program, jazz program. As you're doing that now, are you playing out? Are you doing some gigs? Are you starting to get out? Because everybody I've talked to that were young, that were about your age, and they got influenced young. They somehow or another ended up playing either in church or playing somewhere and starting to get some experience outside of school.
Yeah, I played in church for a little, and I also Diane Ellis introduced me to Professor Ronald Carter, who at the time had a summer jazz program at the South Shore Youth. It was called the South Shore Youth Jazz Ensemble, and it was held at the South Shore Culture Center.
Okay. Is he the one from NIU, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Ronald Carter from Northern Illinois University.
That's a legendary educator right there.
Yeah.
/ player.
Yeah, he was there for 15 years. He taught in East St. Louis, and he ran the South Shore Youth Jazz Ensemble for, I think, 12 years.
Wow.
And, again, he's another person who really impacted my life and a lot of my peers' life. And I actually went to college at Northern Illinois University because of him. Yeah.
So you're learning this stuff and you're doing that kind of stuff, and you're also, since you're playing now, you're melding all these genres. You must have been doing other things. Were you starting to experiment into other genres outside of jazz at that point, or were you kind of straight hardcore? This is what I'm doing right now.
For the longest, I was really just into jazz. So you can imagine, a 6th, 7th, 8th grader.
Like all your friends are going somewhere.
Exactly. They're listening to something else, and I'm like, man, I want to check out this Duke Ellington record, And again, at that time, throughout elementary school, I met Ronald Carter, and he had a program, South Shore Youth Jazz Ensemble, 3 months out of the year, each summer, where they paid the students to come and rehearse 6 days a week and play a concert once a week. So
they paid the students.
We got paid. My first summer job ever. Exactly.
It's amazing.
Yeah, he really.
I would have practiced then.
Yeah, he made us fall in love with this music and showed us that we have a lot of possibilities through this music and ingrained a lot of morals in us.
That's amazing. That's an amazing concept. That actually. I mean, now that you've said that almost that's how everything should be, right? If they can get grants or something and pay the students that they see have something to do this, that could change a lot of things.
Yeah, it was a phenomenal program.
Man, so that's really what you were doing throughout high school. Did you go right from high school into college? Or?
Yeah, that was mostly throughout elementary school.
Okay.
Then I studied at Kenwood Academy. William McClellan was the band director, and again I went to Northern Illinois University under Ronald Carter, which I met when I was in elementary school, and I did my undergrad in music education, and from there I went to DePaul University and got my master's in jazz pedagogy.
So did you think you wanted to be a band director at one point?
Oh yeah, I knew. I still do have a passion for teaching, because to me it's all connected. The greatest players are legends in this music. We're also the greatest educators. So I think it's all connected. So again, Miss Ellis, Professor Carter. All these mentors had impact on me and made me love education as well.
I always find it interesting because when you get with somebody that's just a killing player,
Mm-hmm.
and then they can explain exactly what they're doing, how they're playing it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's like the best of both worlds. And then when they teach,
Mm-hmm.
it's like magic. I mean,
Yep.
they really influence a lot of people.
Yeah.
So you still have that kind of passion now, even though you're
Absolutely.
traveling all over the place?
Absolutely, yeah. One of my main goals is to eventually, right now I do want to tour and play a lot, but I want to eventually settle down somewhere and get a teaching opportunity, teaching
Sure.
position. Yeah.
Well, and the way the world is now, I mean, like what we were talking about with your brand new recording coming out, Modern Flow Volume 2.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's online, everything's available, and for you to fly from Chicago to New York or back or forth, it's 2 hours and you're there, and it's no big deal anymore.
Mhm.
It's not like you got to get on a train and drive across the entire
Right.
country to
Yeah.
go
Yeah.
somewhere. So you're at NIU now. Are you starting to sit in, starting to play in Chicago, and starting to
Yeah.
get things happening in Chicago?
Yeah. While I was at NIU, we were driving almost every weekend, coming to jam sessions at the Velvet Lounge, jam sessions at the Apartment Lounge, Green Mill. So yeah, I was studying music education at NIU, but at the same time driving to Chicago back home almost every weekend, meeting, networking with musicians, and writing music and playing with cats.
So as a younger musician coming up at that point, I mean, how important? I mean, right now you're writing all your own music. Well, you're playing and writing your own music and everything like that. But you must have learned a lot of standards. You must have learned that background, right? I mean, so I mean,
Yeah.
how important was that focus to help you then move into writing your original compositions?
Yeah, absolutely. There's no avoiding it, to be honest. That's the kind of the root of this music. We have to learn the tradition, and jazz standards are in the tradition of the music. That's why I encourage all my students to go to jam sessions. At one point, I remember trying to learn a tune a week, and at the end of the week, we had a jam session at the Velvet Lounge. Whatever tune I was working on that week, I would go to the jam session and call that tune. And that was my test if I really knew the tune, playing it at the jam session with musicians. So there's really no way to avoid learning the language and the tradition of the music.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
actually, when you're doing that, and then you go to the Velvet or you go to the Apartment with
Yeah.
Ron or somebody,
Uh-huh.
and if you're not playing it right, they'll probably let you know, right?
They'll let you know, then you go back the next week and you don't move to the next tune until you play that one right. Yeah.
So give me a good story about either going to the Velvet or going with Vaughn or something, and you went up there. You either had a good experience or a bad experience, and you were just like, man, but it influenced you and it motivated you to push forward.
Oh yeah. I started going to the Velvet Lounge 7th, 8th grade.
So you could get in; they'd let you in.
Well, Fred
Yeah,
Anderson, who owned, late great Fred Anderson, who owned the Velvet Lounge, he knew there was a group of us, young, 7th, 8th graders. He knew that we were about the music. We didn't want to come and drink or mess around, so he would let us in, no problem. Just sit, next to the stage and play, stay away from the bar.
Yeah.
But he knew that we were about the music.
Yeah.
But I would go to the Velvet again every Sunday from like 7th, 8th grade, and I remember the first tune I ever played at the Velvet was "There'll Never Be Another You," classic jazz standard. And at the time, I thought I knew the tune, but after playing it at that session, I learned quickly that I didn't know the tune. So I went home, feelings hurt, practiced all next week, came back the next week and played it again, still not up to par, went back the next week, and it's just a part of the process, continuing to go back and learn. And I always say the jam session is like the university. That's where we really learn to play and interact with musicians.
With the jam session too, I mean, I think a lot of people think about, learning tunes and networking, but I mean, you get up there, you have to sound like you've played with these guys. I mean, if you really are going to do it, you got to sound like you've played with these guys like for a long time, and get up there and just make it sound exactly like, hey, that band's been together. How long have you guys been together? Oh, we just met,
Yeah.
I mean, but that's the whole trick, right?
It's a language, yeah. That's exactly what the trick is. That's how we can travel across the globe, have language barriers, but still be able to create music with people that we can't verbally speak with, because we know the language of this music, and that's why the jam session is so important, to interact with musicians and learn how to play off of other musicians.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're going to DePaul now, and you left NIU, you graduated, and you're going to DePaul, and that was for jazz, right? So you went to DePaul for jazz for
Yeah, I
your
went
master's?
to DePaul for my master's jazz pedagogy at DePaul, and my undergraduate was music education from NIU.
Okay. So were you writing and recording when you were at DePaul too?
That's when I actually first started to get into composition. Late 2009, 2010 early, first couple years of grad school, I started to write music while I was at DePaul University, yes.
Yeah, I mean, so you're going to school, you're writing music and everything. Now, when did all of a sudden you have like that break where you start playing a lot in town? Because I remember when I had my radio show, I don't know, 5-6 years ago, and you were on it, and you had, I think your first or second album was out, and you were start playing all over town. You were doing tons of stuff and everything. I think you were still at DePaul maybe at that point or something. So it was like during that time. Was there a certain point that all of a sudden things started popping?
I think really once I moved back to Chicago, moved back home after being away at school for 4 years at NIU, and going to DePaul is right in the heart of the city. Yeah. So, it's easy to network with musicians. It's easy to have a gig here, and then 2 hours later have a gig here. So it's easy to work, and that's a beautiful thing about Chicago. I tell other musicians all the time, like, this is one of the cities where you can be a full-time musician and have a beautiful life, And at that time I was performing and playing a lot, excuse me, networking with a bunch of musicians.
Yeah. And I mean, when you're doing all that stuff and it's kind of starting to build. Now, how did you all of a sudden get into the Thelonious Monk trumpet competition? Because that was shortly after you left DePaul, maybe, or was that?
A couple years. I graduated DePaul 2012, and that was 2014.
Okay.
So a couple years after.
So you were in town playing a ton and everything. But what sparked your interest? Like, I'm going to try that out.
Yeah. I had done a couple competitions before that, and for me, I try to keep myself in the loop. So I follow a lot of musicians that live in New York, and at that time I was still in Chicago. Some of my peers that I look up to, like Ambrose, Phil Dizak, bunch of beautiful players, and I noticed that they did these exact same competitions. So that's what really piqued my interest, just checking out what my peers were checking out and what they were doing, and that led me to that, because I didn't know anything about it until I saw that Ambrose, Phil Dizak, and some of my other peers have done it. Maurice,
yeah. I actually didn't really. I'm sure they've been around for a long time, but it seems like in the past 10 years or so, all of a sudden there's been more and more of these competitions, which essentially, correct me if I'm wrong, but essentially you go and you're there, and there's usually famous judges there, and they're judging you and stuff. But the whole point of it is that the winners, and sometimes it's just one, sometimes there's a multiple amount of winners, but they get scholarship money to pursue, and that helps them do another project, that helps them get somewhere, which I love the idea behind it, so it makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely.
And so when you tried that out, is that kind of what you were thinking? You're like, all right, I'll just go in, I'll win this thing, and then everything will be great?
Not necessarily.
No, not like that? No?
Not exactly.
Oh.
No, I really didn't have no expectations. I just wanted to check it out. That's because all of my other peers were doing it, and it seemed it could have been a potential step to help me get to New York, which it was. But initially, my thing was just to check these things out, these competitions, because my peer, Jason Palmer, another guy, he did the ITG competition, and I'm a huge fan of his. And like, man, maybe I should check this out.
Yeah.
One of my buddies did. So that was the initial, intention behind it.
So who were the judges for yours?
Roy Hargrove,
right?
Arturo Sandoval, Jimmy Owens, Ambrose, Quincy Jones. I'm missing someone. It was ridiculous.
Was Dee Dee Bridgewater or no?
She was a part of the competition.
I just remember seeing a picture at one point when you were there. Yeah. I mean, what's it like? Like, you're going up there, you're a fairly young guy at that point. You're going up there and you're playing tunes in front of all these people. I mean, it's got to be kind of weird, right? I mean
for a second, but honestly, my approach to that entire competition, and just really music in general, this is something that I have been doing every day for a long time. So I just got on stage and just played music, what I do. I was in the jam session on stage. It wasn't even a competition to me. It was just me playing,
That's a great way to think about it.
Yeah,
that's a great way to think about it. So when you won, were you stunned that you actually won? I mean, not stunned, but you're probably like, whoa, holy mackerel, this actually worked? Definitely.
Actually still on cloud 9 about that, I was definitely shocked. Yeah.
I mean, that has something like that. So you ended up winning some scholarship money, but then you also won like a recording project at Concord, which is huge. And it kind of took your career, right, from one level to another just because of the people that you were able to probably get in contact with at that point.
Yeah, just being associated with the Thelonious Monk Institute, helped boost my career, getting me in different networks and rubbing elbows with different musicians. Just the pure association. And I'm grateful for everything the Institute has done. And I released a project in 2016 on Concord called The Way We Play. And it was a concept record. I took a bunch of my favorite jazz standards and pretty much flipped them to fit the sound of my band. And
okay.
It was a beautiful project on Concord, yeah.
So when you're doing that, and I mean, let's talk a little bit about the music business too, because we talk a little bit off camera about it, but the music business, I mean, it's probably like any business that, there's a lot of guys down here, a lot of guys that can play and everything, but when you get that little bump and you're able to just connect with a few other people can start to hear your sound a little bit, and that probably really starts to help. Do you think that that's when, outside of the Concord recording, but just like getting that bump, being able to move to New York, starting to meet people, and they're returning your phone calls now rather than you just kind of trying to reach out to them? Was that like a turning point?
Yeah, I think it was just more exposure.
Okay.
Just, again, being associated with the name Thelonious Monk Institute. And then also, we talked about off camera a little, just the internet age,
right.
Being able to connect with, again, I was in Chicago at the time, but building close relationships with players in New York and across the country over the internet. So when I would visit New York, it's like, I was already in the scene because I was in contact with a lot of these musicians and just getting to know them.
Yeah, you know what? Actually, I mean, we talked a little bit about it, but you're taking it to another level because you're right. I mean, you walk into New York and you've either connected on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever. They've seen some of your playing. Like they've heard this. You've heard that.
Almost know everyone. Yeah.
You walk into a club, they're like, "Hey, Marquis, what's going on?"
Yeah. That's to a certain extent, it was kind of like that. Yeah.
That's insane. So now, the Concord record, and then you're starting to tour. You're starting to do bigger things. I think you took your group over to Europe a little bit, and I mean now you're going back and forth a lot, right? So I mean, tell us a little bit about how that started. I mean, were you starting to tour? Did you find a tour manager over there? I mean, how did you also break out of the States? Or
so we released a project in 2016, and Fola Management, actually Zakia Fola, Chicago management company. I work with her a lot, and she helped me connect with different agencies, and again, just kind of networking and names, getting around and making connections. I booked a tour. I think it was fall of 2016, my first European tour, and we toured the record. Again, being associated with Concord also helped.
Yeah. Do they give you any push behind that? I mean, as far as like when you're touring, or that's pretty much on you? Maybe they're pushing the record a little bit.
Yeah, no tour support, but PR support. You know, they promote the record and get it, write-ups and different digital write-ups.
That helps
so
a ton.
That alone helps a lot. Again, it's just more exposure.
Sure. So when you're going out and you're building your name and you're traveling and stuff, but I still think that you can do a lot of PR and a lot of push behind a record, but really having you show up somewhere and perform it live is the best medicine, right?
Yeah,
to sell
no
things and build
that.
a relationship.
Yeah, there's no way to get around that. You want to connect with the people, so the goal is to get the people in the seat to feel the music. Even when you record a project, they listen to the project. The goal from that project is to make them want to come to the show, to get the full experience.
Right, and there's a lot of competition for their attention these days. So if you can do that,
you're doing something right.
Yeah. So now you're releasing this new recording, October 19th, and you're also still doing like one-offs. I don't know if you're doing one-offs or whatever with Kurt Elling here at the Chicago Jazz Festival. I know that you've done different things with different artists around the country and stuff. Are you putting a tour together for this recording? Or are you doing some different things where people might be able to see you somewhere else in the country? Or
Yeah, we've got a fall tour coming up, actually, a West Coast tour in October. And then we're going to Europe for the entire month of November to tour the record. Yeah. We have a release show in New York at the Jazz Standard in September. Just building and trying to push the record as much as we can. Yeah.
So with putting out a record, now you're putting it out under your own name on this one, right?
Yeah.
And same thing with the first one. Volume 1 went out under your
Mm-hmm.
own name too. So you not only are like writing, playing, putting tours together and everything, you're pushing it out, doing some networking online and everything like that, right? I mean, but with the way the digital age is these days, it's a lot easier. But my thought is that since your music is beyond just jazz, right? I mean, do you have to worry about all those different genres and reaching out to the different like hip hop and blues and rock and jazz, whatever? Or you just push it out as Marquis Hill and that's what it is?
Yeah, honestly, again, that's how I approach composition, and that's how I approach releasing it as well. It's all the same music to me.
Yeah.
This Volume 1 and also Modern Flow Volume 2, I'm releasing it under the genre jazz. But again, the goal is for when audience members and listeners to listen to the project, they see the connection between all of the genres.
Yeah, I mean, to me, when you listen to, like, I took a listen to some of the earlier stuff, and you like music or you don't like music.
Yeah.
You know, and I think it grabs you a certain way. And it's always difficult, especially in this day and age when people say, oh, this is jazz, this is rock, this is jazz, this is blues. I mean, last night, right, I can guarantee you that there was a good percentage of people last night that were casual music fans that maybe heard Kurt Elling's name before or maybe heard Marquis Hill's name before and came out and they were like, this is unbelievable. What is this? And if you told them it was jazz, they wouldn't believe you because it was just music they loved. I mean, are you seeing that when you're touring more and more? Like there's more casual music fans coming out or more people not hardcore, like, you know, worried about this and that. They're just coming out because they enjoy something?
Absolutely. I think this music is reaching a younger audience. And I think slowly the genre lines, they're fading away. There are a lot of artists who are producing music that cross genres, and I think the music is reaching a younger audience, and yeah, that genre line, it's slowly fading away, and I think it's a good thing, you know.
You know, with all your touring and stuff, and when you're in Europe compared to here, or when you're in Asia compared to the States, do you see more of that where people are like, they're not worried if it's jazz or rock, or they're worried that it's, I gotta go see Marquis Hill play.
Yeah, even here,
yeah.
You know, in the States to a certain extent. I think nowadays people just are attracted to good music. They, like you said, they like what they like, and I think it's good. You know, it's a good movement in that direction. You know?
Yeah.
People produce good music, and people want to hear good music.
Well, we're looking forward to hearing this. It's coming out October 19th. Modern Flows Volume 2.
Yes, sir.
MarquisHill.com is the place to go. Obviously, it'll be available on Amazon, Spotify, iTunes, CD Baby. I can go on and on. There's 100 other streaming services. But hit him up on his website. Find out where he's coming, because I know you're back and forth in Chicago here and there, and I'm sure you're going to do a whole release show somewhere in Chicago at some point.
Definitely.
Once that's set up. And we'll have that available on ChicagoJazzMagazine.com, ChicagoJazz.com. But Marquis, I'm glad we connected, man. I know I haven't talked to you in like 5 years, and then you seem to be doing a lot more than that was happening before, which is incredible because you already had a lot happening. So
thank you for having me, man.
Awesome, man. And thank you for watching, and we will see you next time on Chicago Jazz Magazine.